In the heart of a quiet town, nestled between a deli and a thrift shop, stood Jake's auto repair shop. The sign above the door swung slightly in the breeze, its peeling paint a testament to years of hard work and tireless dedication. Jake was an embodiment of humility. His grease-stained coveralls and calloused hands revealed a life spent immersed in engines rather than accolades. At 40, he had mastered the intricate dance of gears and pistons, enjoying the symphony of clanking tools and sputtering engines. Customers appreciated his honest approach. No frills, just dependable workmanship. He had a knack for transforming rusted relics into running machines. Yet, despite his skills, Jake preferred to remain in the background, shunning attention while relishing the satisfaction of a job well done. Each day started similarly. A couple of early morning customers stopped by for routine maintenance or odd jobs. The familiar scent of oil mixed with coffee wafted through the air as he worked. But today felt different. There was an underlying current of restlessness that seemed to linger just beyond the warm glow of his shop. As he adjusted a worn-out carburetor, thoughts drifted to how far he'd come from his father's garage in their small town. Little did he know that this ordinary day would soon spiral into extraordinary chaos, setting him on a collision course with fate when an unexpected stranger would drive into his life in an old Ford, forever altering the course of his mundane existence. The tranquility of Jake's day was abruptly interrupted by the rumble of an old Ford making its way down the dusty road, its engine sputtering as if it were fighting for breath. As it pulled into the lot, Jake's interest peaked. He could see a figure through the cracked windshield, leaning over the steering wheel with an air of urgency. The car itself was a relic, a faded blue color with rust spots that whispered tales of years on the road. As the driver emerged, Jake noticed his disheveled appearance. Unkempt hair, a scruffy beard, and clothes that seemed to have seen better days. The stranger's eyes darted around anxiously, betraying a sense of desperation that immediately set off alarm bells in Jake's mind. There was something unsettling about him, yet the mechanic's instinct to help kicked in. "Hey there," Jake called out, wiping his hands on a rag as he approached. The man stepped out of the car and quickly explained that he was having trouble with the vehicle's transmission, something he noticed only moments before arriving. His voice trembled slightly, hinting at a deeper anxiety beneath his composed facade. Jake listened intently as the stranger detailed the issue, but couldn't shake the feeling that this minor mechanical problem was just the surface of something far more troubling. With a nod of understanding, Jake gestured for him to pull into the garage, unaware that this seemingly simple encounter would soon entangle him in a web of unforeseen consequences. As Jake directed the stranger to pull into the garage, he couldn't help but notice the quirks of the old Ford. The vehicle was a hodgepodge of different parts. Its faded blue exterior contrasted with a shiny hood that looked suspiciously new. Jake's instincts kicked in as he opened the hood, immediately hit by the smell of burnt oil mixed with something more acrid. With practiced hands, he began his assessment, checking the transmission fluid and listening closely to what the engine had to say. The erratic sputtering when the car idled hinted at deeper issues than just the transmission. Meanwhile, he stole glances at the stranger, who fidgeted nervously near a workbench, glancing toward the door and then back at Jake. His body language was tense, a man caught between anxiety and urgency. "Seems like it might be more than just a simple fix," Jake remarked, trying to ease the tension. The stranger nodded but didn't meet his eyes, instead focusing on his own fidgeting hands. As Jake replaced a few worn-out cables, he noticed an unusual cut on the stranger's forearm, fresh and still red, and wondered how it had happened. "What happened to your arm?" Jake asked casually while tightening a bolt, keenly aware that any casual inquiry could unearth critical information. The stranger hesitated before offering a vague answer about an accident at work, his anxious eyes shifting toward the garage door as if waiting for someone or something. Though Jake continued working, an unsettling feeling lingered in the air, hinting that this seemingly routine task was far from ordinary. After a tense hour of work, Jake finally closed the hood of the old Ford, satisfied that he had addressed the most critical issues. The engine purred smoothly, a stark contrast to its earlier sputtering. As he wiped his hands on a rag, Jake turned to see the stranger watching him with a mix of relief and gratitude etched on his face. "Thank you," the man said sincerely, his voice steadier now. "You saved me." He rummaged through his pockets and retrieved a small, weathered coin, metal glinting against dirt and grease. "Here, take this. It's all I have." Jake hesitated, eyeing the token curiously. It was an old military coin, perhaps from a unit long forgotten, but it felt significant nonetheless. "I can't take this," he replied politely, though part of him was flattered by the gesture. "Please," the stranger insisted, urgency creeping back into his voice as he glanced nervously at the clock on the wall. "I need to go." His eyes darted toward the garage door again, as if he half expected someone to come looking for him. With a reluctant nod, Jake accepted the coin and tucked it away in his pocket. The stranger quickly climbed into the Ford, his demeanor shifting once more as he started the engine with a sense of hurried determination. Before Jake could say another word, the car roared to life and sped out of the lot, leaving behind only a cloud of dust, and an unsettling feeling that something was not quite right with this encounter. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Jake returned home feeling a sense of accomplishment from his day's work. He kicked off his boots at the door, the familiar creak of the floorboards echoing around him. The quiet of his house enveloped him like a warm blanket, and he allowed himself a moment to relish the peace after a long day in the garage. However, as he prepared to make dinner, an unusual sound penetrated the tranquility, an ominous rumble that had no place in their sleepy neighborhood. Looking out the window, Jake's stomach sank as he spotted military trucks rolling down the street, their dark silhouettes cutting through the fading light. The sight was jarring. Such vehicles rarely entered their town, let alone in numbers. Jake pressed his face closer to the glass, curiosity mingling with apprehension. The trucks were followed by men in tactical gear who moved with purpose, surveying their surroundings as they disembarked. A chill ran down his spine as questions flooded his mind. What was happening? Had something gone wrong because of that stranger's visit? He glanced nervously down the street toward where he'd last seen the Ford leave. Instinct and a nagging feeling of unease urged him to hide, perhaps even flee, but curiosity held him captive in that moment. As he watched shadows dance under the flickering streetlights, Jake couldn't shake off a sense of impending chaos creeping closer to his home. The tranquility of Jake's evening shattered as soldiers poured from the military trucks, their disciplined movements starkly contrasting with the stillness of the neighborhood. The once quiet streets soon echoed with the sounds of orders barked into radios and heavy boots crunching against gravel. Jake pressed his forehead against the cool glass, horrified and fascinated by the spectacle unfolding before him. Armed personnel swiftly began to block off roads, erecting barricades that isolated his home from the rest of the town. The soldiers moved strategically, each one seemingly aware of their purpose: to search for the stranger who had driven away in that old Ford. Jake's heart raced at the thought. Could they be looking for him? For something he didn't know about? Outdoors, a commanding officer surveyed the area, his voice booming as he instructed his team to fan out and conduct thorough searches. "Check every vehicle. We need to find him," he shouted. The urgency in his tone sent a chill down Jake's spine. He was no longer just a witness. He felt himself becoming part of a larger drama. He considered fleeing to the back of the house, yet curiosity rooted him in place. What if they found something linking him to the stranger? As shadows deepened in the growing dusk, Jake's home became a stage for chaos, amplifying his fears that something far more sinister than routine military operations was at play, with him unknowingly caught in its crosshairs. Panic gripped Jake as he watched soldiers swarm his neighborhood, each movement sharp and precise, contrasting with the quiet familiarity of his small-town life. The peaceful streets that had once felt like a refuge now seemed like a cage, the military presence turning his home into a scene from a thriller he never wanted to star in. Confusion clouded his thoughts. Why was this happening? What had he unwittingly become a part of? He paced the floor, glancing toward the front door, half tempted to escape through the back. But where could he go? The roads were blocked, and the sight of soldiers moving with purpose made it clear that this was no mere drill. His heart raced as he replayed the events of the day. The stranger's anxious demeanor, the military coin, the hurried departure. Each detail felt like a piece of a puzzle he couldn't solve. Jake wrestled with fear and uncertainty, trapped in a whirlwind of emotions. He felt as though he had been thrust into a world far removed from the grease-stained walls of his garage, now overshadowed by ominous shadows cast by the military vehicles. The air felt thick with tension, and he could hear muffled commands drifting through the window, heightening his sense of dread. What if they came looking for him? The thought sent shivers down his spine. Alone in his house, Jake felt both invisible and exposed, his mind racing with questions that had no answers as he stood on the precipice of an unknown reality threatening to engulf him. As Jake peered through the blinds, his mind raced with the possibilities of who that stranger really was. The military presence outside suggested a connection far beyond a simple car repair. Memories began to surface, snippets of conversations he had overheard at the diner or in the garage from town locals discussing a recent string of high-profile incidents involving a fugitive on the run. Someone linked to military secrets and whispered about in hushed tones. The stranger with the old Ford matched all the key details. Known only by a few nicknames, Ghost or Phantom, he allegedly possessed crucial information that could compromise national security. Rumors swirled about a leak within military ranks and an imminent threat poised to unfold across the country. Numerous law enforcement agencies were reportedly hunting him down, but somehow he slipped through their grasp. Jake's encounter suddenly morphed into something monumental. The stranger appeared desperate, wounded, and anxious, but there was a sinister complexity about him. He had information others wanted at any cost. Was he on the verge of exposing something monumental? Or perhaps he was being framed as a scapegoat for deeper issues within those very agencies. A chilling thought coursed through Jake's mind. Had he unknowingly helped someone involved in a web of intrigue? As shadows of soldiers loomed closer to his home, the gravity of the stranger's identity weighed heavily on him, amplifying his fear that his mundane existence had collided with forces far beyond his comprehension. This was no ordinary encounter. It was a crossroads in a narrative fraught with danger and deception. As Jake's heart raced with uncertainty, he found himself standing at a crossroads, wrestling with a dilemma that could define his character. The noise outside intensified, a cacophony of shouts and the rumble of military vehicles, as he weighed his options. On one side lay the impulse to act, to assist the stranger whom he now believed was in dire trouble. On the other, the instinct for self-preservation urging him to stay silent and uninvolved. He recalled his upbringing, where values like honesty and compassion were instilled in him. Helping someone in need felt like the right thing to do, yet this situation was unlike any he had encountered before. Would offering help put him and his loved ones in jeopardy? The thought gnawed at him as shadows loomed closer outside. Jake envisioned the stranger's anxious expression, the tension in his voice when asking for assistance, and contrasted it with the ruthless determination of the soldiers filtering through his neighborhood. What kind of danger did this fugitive bring? Was he a scapegoat or a genuine threat? As he paced back and forth, Jake grappled with feelings of guilt and fear. If he chose to remain uninvolved, would he regret it later? Would that decision haunt him forever? He felt trapped between moral duty and personal safety, each choice echoing louder than the last. Ultimately, Jake understood that whatever path he took would not only shape his destiny, but also challenge everything he believed about right and wrong in a world suddenly filled with gray areas. As Jake paced anxiously in his living room, the weight of his dilemma pressing down on him, he caught a glimpse of something glinting beneath the couch. Curiosity piqued. He knelt down and reached under to retrieve a small item, a crumpled piece of paper. Unfolding it, his heart sank as he recognized it immediately. It was a receipt from his garage with the stranger's name scrawled on it in shaky handwriting. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The stranger had left behind more than just a token of gratitude. He had inadvertently provided evidence that could link Jake directly to him. The document was not merely a record of a car repair. It contained details that could implicate him in whatever trouble the fugitive was embroiled in. What if the military discovered this receipt during their search? Jake's mind raced with the implications. He could already hear the footsteps outside growing closer, the voices of soldiers filtering through the walls as they conducted their search. Suddenly, his home felt like a trap, and he was standing at the center of a storm. He knew he had to make a decision. Should he destroy the receipt to protect himself or turn it over to the authorities if they asked? Each option carried its own risks. With everything hanging in the balance, Jake realized that this twist of fate could change everything. Not just for him but also for the fugitive whose life was now intertwined with his own in ways he never anticipated. As the minutes ticked by, Jake's anxiety morphed into a palpable tension. Outside, the military personnel moved with relentless efficiency, canvassing the neighborhood like predators on the hunt. Voices rose and fell as they interviewed his neighbors, their questions sharp and urgent, punctuated by the sound of radios crackling with updates. Jake's heart raced. Each inquiry struck a nerve, amplifying his fear that someone might connect him to the stranger. He peered through the window, watching as two soldiers approached Mrs. Henderson next door, her hands trembling as she held her coffee cup. They asked pointed questions about any unusual activity or visitors. Jake swallowed hard, recalling how the stranger had hastily departed after thanking him. Had anyone seen their exchange? The very notion sent chills down his spine. The receipt lay heavy in his pocket, a constant reminder of his complicity. What if it fell into the wrong hands? Jake's mind raced with images of soldiers bursting through his door, demanding answers he wasn't prepared to give. He felt like a deer caught in headlights, paralyzed between the urge to flee and the instinct to stand his ground. Suddenly, a shout rang out from the street as one of the soldiers spotted something on the ground, perhaps evidence linked to the Ford. The atmosphere thickened with urgency and fear. Jake could almost hear his own pulse reverberating in his ears. Every second felt like an eternity as he grappled with the reality that his life was spiraling out of control, and he was now part of a narrative far beyond his understanding. Amidst the rising chaos, a familiar face appeared at Jake's front porch. His neighbor, Sarah, had come over after hearing the commotion outside. A local journalist known for her tenacity, Sarah was always attuned to the pulse of their small town, and her instincts told her that something was amiss. She knocked softly on the door, her eyes scanning for any signs of distress. "Jake, are you okay?" she asked, concern etched on her features. He hesitated before letting her in, glancing nervously at the window as soldiers continued to scour the neighborhood. I'm not sure," he admitted, his voice betraying his fear. "There's been a military presence since today, and I think it's because of a stranger I helped." Sarah's expression shifted from concern to determination. "What do you mean? What happened?" As he explained the situation, she listened intently, piecing together the fragments of his story. "Jake, you're not in this alone," she reassured him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You need to stay calm. We can figure this out together." Her confidence sparked a flicker of hope within him. She quickly grabbed her notepad and started jotting down details, suggesting they document everything in case they needed proof of his innocence. "If they're looking for evidence, we have to be smart about this," she said, her tone firm but supportive. With Sarah by his side, Jake felt a sense of solidarity amidst the pressure mounting around them. Together, they could navigate this labyrinth of uncertainty and fear, armed with courage and a plan. The following day, tension clung to the air like heavy fog as Jake prepared to open his garage. His mind was a whirlwind of turmoil, and every creak of the floorboards felt amplified, echoing the weight of uncertainty pressing on him. Just as he reached for the toolbox, the door swung open with a force that startled him. A group of military personnel stormed in, their presence imposing and unyielding. The leader, a stern-faced officer, stepped forward with purpose. "Jake Miller?" he demanded, his tone leaving no room for doubt. The room felt smaller as all eyes turned to him. Jake's heart raced. He couldn't deny his identity but also felt exposed under their scrutinizing gazes. "Why yes, that's me," he stammered, trying to contain his panic. "Where is the Ford you repaired yesterday?" the officer pressed, crossing his arms in a stance that suggested impatience mixed with urgency. "We need answers about its driver." Jake hesitated for a moment, then gestured toward the service bay where it had been parked temporarily. "It's out back," he managed to say, holding back a wave of dread. As they filed past him towards the rear of the garage, Jake's mind flashed through every decision he'd made regarding the stranger. The choice to help him, the acceptance of that coin, and now this confrontation looming like a storm cloud overhead. What would they uncover? Would they connect him to whatever danger the fugitive posed? As fear settled in his gut, Jake realized he was on the brink of losing everything. His peace, his reputation, and perhaps even his freedom, as questions about loyalty and guilt churned relentlessly in his thoughts. As the military personnel filed into the garage, Jake felt the weight of their scrutiny pressing down on him. He knew that this confrontation could lead to a pivotal moment in his life. The officer in charge, a tall man with a steely gaze, demanded detailed answers about the stranger and the car. Jake's heart raced as he weighed his options. Cooperate fully and risk implicating himself further, or attempt to deflect their inquiries and protect what little freedom he had left. Drawing a deep breath, Jake chose cooperation, believing honesty might be his only path forward. "The Ford is out back," he said, gesturing toward the service bay, his voice steadying as he spoke. The man came in looking for help with his transmission. The officer narrowed his eyes, studying Jake's face for any signs of deceit. "Did you know anything about him before yesterday?" he pressed, the air thick with tension. "No, just that he seemed in a hurry," Jake replied, forcing himself to meet the officer's gaze. "He didn't give me much information." The soldiers exchanged glances, and for a moment, Jake feared they would see right through him. But instead, they seemed to buy his story, at least for now. As they moved toward the back of the garage, Jake felt a mix of relief and dread wash over him. He had made his choice. He had chosen to face the truth rather than hide from it. Whatever came next would determine not only his fate but possibly that of the fugitive as well. And in that moment of resolution, he found a flicker of hope amidst the uncertainty. In the aftermath of the confrontation, as the echoes of military boots faded into the distance, Jake sat alone in his garage, the weight of recent events pressing heavily on him. His mind wandered back to that fateful day when he chose to extend a helping hand to a stranger in need. What had seemed like a simple act of kindness had spiraled into chaos, forcing him to navigate a labyrinth of fear and uncertainty. He reflected on the nature of loyalty, what it meant to stand by someone in trouble, even when it could endanger his own life. The stranger, now a fugitive linked to secrets far beyond Jake's understanding, had turned his quiet existence upside down. Had he done the right thing in choosing empathy over self-preservation? The coin still rested in his pocket, a constant reminder of their brief encounter and the choices that had led him here. Courage, he realized, was not just about facing external threats. It was also about confronting his own values and beliefs. The ordeal had tested him in ways he never anticipated, prompting him to reconsider what it meant to be a good person in a world filled with gray areas. As he wiped down his tools, Jake acknowledged that while the future remained uncertain, he had gained clarity about his own character. No longer merely a mechanic in a small town, he now understood the profound impact of choices made in moments of kindness, and the heavy responsibility that came with them.